All right, Drive Safe Dave back here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation, and I have Charles Gracey here, host of Cents Per Mile podcast. How you doing, Charles?
I'm good. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, are you going to get any of that rain over there in Chattanooga from this hurricane, or is it going to just miss y'all by going a little bit to the east?
Verdict is still out. It's looking like we're going to get a little bit of it, but not nearly
One of
as
those
much as
outer
people on the East
bands,
Coast.
a little bit of just a little bit. And you know what's nice about that, Charles? I'm just going to tell you, you can say I lived through Hurricane Nicole. Yeah, I actually I survived Hurricane Nicole
I'll
in
go out and pick
Chattanooga.
up one of the T-shirts.
Just, I made it. I was one of the survivors. It's crazy. We've had two hit, not almost a whole year, and then we've had two hit with almost a month of each other into Florida. Kind of a crazy deal, right?
It is, and it's unfortunate, especially for those that are in the mass of it. But as always, resiliency of the people. I think we're going to get through it and band together.
Me too. Those guys, they're solid on their election. They're solid on their hurricanes, right? We got two things going for them down in Florida. All right, Charles, let's get down to the nitty gritty. First of all, before we dive into cents per mile, let's talk a little bit about your side gig.
So yeah, I'm the president of Hot Seat Services, a full service recruiting team that operates anything from lead gen management for our clients, third party pay per hire recruiting, rent a recruiter, or even training workshops to help sharpen the team that they already have in place.
And that recruiting truck drivers.
Yes, absolutely. Truck drivers. That's what we specialize in. I grew up in the industry, so it was important for me when I worked at carriers and I saw that there was a void in how this was done properly to put a solution in place that could both benefit the drivers and the carriers.
So let me ask you a quick question. When you say you grew up in the industry, obviously you have been in the industry, but you said your father also, Charles, also was in the industry?
Yeah, so my father was a driver and a terminal manager, and then when he retired as a terminal manager, went back to driving and now works for me as a recruiter.
So been around the industry a little bit, and you also are bringing up Charles the third, right? In that
Yep.
same limelight of the trucking industry.
Absolutely. He's been involved with it just like I was incorporated in my dad's work life. I've incorporated him in ours, tried to keep him excited about what trucking's all about, what it can be, and bringing his fresh twist to it himself. And he's already decided he wants to do a podcast, wants to talk about trucking, and wants to hire good drivers for good jobs, which no tagline in that, but he's sharp.
Yeah. No tagline. Hey, so let's ask real quick. How did you start Hot Seat Services? I mean, and why did you start your own company?
So I was working for a carrier as a recruiting VP, and I was dealing with all these vendors and shelling out all this money like all the carriers out there are doing. And the one problem I had was everyone's shelling out this money, but nobody was coming to me saying that there might be a problem or a better way. Instead, I have to identify the problem and go to them, which at that point, that's a problem. If I'm spending money, you should be my advocate. So I saw an opening there. I actually suggested to a couple friends that are in the same space that they should open up a company and do this. They didn't. And so I started it as a side gig. I was working still at the carrier. It was just a side hustle to try to help that carrier I was at. And then it grew to the point where I had to resign and just focus on hot seat services.
How and now that you're working on Hot Seat Services, and you supply where all across the country or all in all 48,
Yeah.
is that where you're working? And if
Yeah,
somebody wants to
so
reach and if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you over there?
So they could either go to our website, hotseatservices.com, or they can send an email to info@hotseatservices.com. And one of the members of our team or myself will reach out and try to address any questions or concerns they may have.
Look, I'm just going to ask you, what sets you apart from the others? Honestly, what sets you apart? You got to tell me that.
Being a former driver and growing up in the industry, I've done everything from working in the shop to driving the truck to what I do now. And so I genuinely care about communicating the proper expectations, not only that the driver should have, but that the carrier should have when looking for drivers. If they have something that doesn't make sense, I'm not going to work with it. I'm not going to try to promote something I don't believe in.
Do you and when you talk about that, are you when you first walk into a business? So let's just say I'm the carrier, right? I'm a carrier, and I call you and I say, hey, you know what, Charles? How are you going to prove to me your worth, your value of what I'm going to pay out? Because that is an expense, right? You're talking about shelling out cash. How are you going to make this value to me genuinely over time? I understand it's not something that happens overnight, but I understand that it is the long game, not the short game. What is it you're going to bring to the table for me so that I know that this is the right investment for me?
So depending on your needs, we have commitments where you're not paying anything until you get the hire. So it's guaranteed cost per hire model. You make the hire, then you get charged for the driver. That's just typical third-party recruiting, or we refer to it as pay per hire because we didn't want to fall on that stigma, how negative that industry has viewed those people because they just throw drivers at the wall and hope they stick. Outside of that, what's going to build our trust with the carrier is our onboarding process. We generally want to get to know everything that carrier has to offer, from their culture behind the scenes to their front lines. We want to know the speed of the trucks, what they're outfitted with, what the expectations that they have for the drivers, and bring them to the reality of what the driver's expectations are. So generally, when we're doing our onboarding, that's when it clicks with a carrier. Oh, these people actually care. They want to get to know us. We want to recruit with retention in mind, and that happens from doing it the right way and just being honest with both sides.
You know, and as you mentioned that, and as we continue to talk about it, it's ultimately necessary for you to have a great connection and build relationships with the driver too, not just with the carrier, but you got to go out there and you got to actually build that trust if you're going to bring them in, right? In a quality, because if I'm a quality driver and I may not be happy where I'm at, I know there's a million opportunities out there for me. I need, you know, and I'm going to be promised the world. Right, Charles? I mean, by many, many different people. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So how do you create that trusting relationship with those guys that are just like, oh, yeah, whatever?
Being honest, not BSing them. I talk to them from my experience, just like I've trained my recruiters and my fellow teammates to do the same. Talk to them like people. Understand that these are real people with livelihoods, obligations to their family and their loved ones. You're not just putting a number in a chair. And we really stress that. Be honest, get the answers, don't BS your way through it. Listen to what their wants are and match them up with a job that fits those wants, because then there's two types of people in the world. You got the people with problems and the people with solutions. We want to be the driver and carrier's solution.
All right, so I'm gonna jump a little bit here, and I'm just gonna ask. So tell me about Cents Per Mile podcast. Tell me what that is, because obviously you got the cool headphones and the cool microphone, and you got that deep voice, you know, that radio voice going. So tell me what the Cents Per Mile podcast is all about.
So Cents Per Mile was an idea that I had before we merged with the Cub Ventures team, and they helped us make it a reality. The point was we wanted a platform that we could share our experience both for the drivers and the carriers alike, and address those issues that people generally don't want to talk about, or they're very soft about how they talk about them because they don't want to make one side or another mad.
Like for example. No, for example.
Inward-facing cameras, brokers, politics.
Yeah. Don't bring up the last one ever on this show again. Because you and I both know that's a rabbit hole me and you will go down and never get out of. Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you. It's great to know that people are out there talking about the things that need to be brought up. And I think inward-facing cameras are a reality that we're all going to have to face at some point or another. I mean, honestly, Charles, do you foresee in the next 10 years that that's not a reality for every driver out there on the road?
No, I absolutely do, because insurance dictates the pace of a lot of things. And we've seen from the driver's perspective that it makes them uncomfortable. I remember when they were first being implemented when I was a driver. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It was the most expensive hat rack that my carrier provided. I even went as far as greasing my finger and touching it to clean it and leaving a greasy fingerprint. But now that I work on the carrier side and on behalf of them, I've also seen it exonerate drivers from being automatically guilty until proven innocent. So it is one of those things where it's a double-edged sword, and proper communication and use of these platforms is going to be beneficial to our industry and bringing the drivers on board and letting them see the benefit of having this system.
Yeah, I know, and I do like the fact that the conversation is there, right? And that's what Cents Per Mile is doing. It's generally talking about it, not trying to sell the product. You're trying to talk about the reality of it, because I think that's really what we want to be. And here at BCB Live about safety, I think that's what we try to do and talk about, is that the reality of safety. We try to have fun with it. We try to make sure that everybody understands the different aspects of it. it's not different in the United States as it is in other countries. Safety is safety. It's paramount by nature. It is what we do and how we need to survive in this industry. I think it's going to be created. I would love to have the opportunity to come on your show and talk about safety sometime and about how important a role it needs to be played in the industry. It is a passion here. And let me talk to you about that. I get the inward-facing cameras and where that is applied to, because and I know that's the kind of conversations you have. How many of the ones do you find are passionate in the safety realm? Because I want to hear a little bit about cents by the mile, because to me the miles don't make any sense unless there's safety involved. And that's my deal here. And I know that sounds crazy, and I just thought of that. What are you doing in the regards to safety, and when you talk to carriers, and how important is to the drivers, the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, so whether it be cents per mile or hot seat services, like I said, we service two clients, the drivers and the carriers. And safety is a big fraction of that. You can't have drivers out there with my wife and children on the road, or my friends and family on the road, that are being unsafe. So you have to keep that in mind when you're recruiting these drivers. And when we're doing the show, you have to keep in mind that education is safety. We want the audience, which is the drivers and the carriers, to be safe with the general motoring public. So education, a lot of what we're doing is educating people in a fun way, making it where it's interesting and they want to tune in. But just like with the recruiting, education, sometimes it's reallocating our efforts to educate them on the why, rather than just saying this is the here and now and you must accept it.
How did Cub Ventures get you started in this side of it? I'm just curious. I want to know that part of it real quick. You said you were open book. Let's go there.
Yeah, so Cub Ventures owns Veterans in Trucking, CDL Life, Bright Lights Media, and a conglomerate of companies that are under that umbrella. Directly, they were a competitor of mine when I got started, but we found a lot of synergies working together on the benefits of our clients, as well as with their driver network that they advertise to. So over time, there was so many synergies that we couldn't ignore the benefits it would bring to their client base as well as mine to work together. And eventually it became a merger of the brands with myself and Cub Venture. And it's been a great team. I mean, I'm thrilled to be part of it. I had this idea of cents per mile, and because I was a smaller business, it was something that I had to inch up to. And immediately within joining their team, here it became a reality. And now I get to work with one of the people I love, my co-host, Paul Gibson, who is just a media master. So he was the one behind giving me this studio in order to just build the brand even further.
Do you have, and when you bring this perspective that you have onto the show, right, with your business sense and talking about these things, and obviously you bring a different perspective with some history, how do you keep it invigorated and different? You know, how do you make it different? We have the same issues every day, right? I come to the show every day, and I'm going through the sheets, and I'm trying to find, that hot story. Russia's backing out of Kirsten today in a withdrawal. I don't want to tell the news like everybody else is telling it. I mean, I want to make sure the show is got stuff people want to hear about right now in what we're talking about. How do you find that?
So being that I talk and our company talks to drivers all day, every day, and that I work on behalf of so many carriers, I get to see these hot button issues and things that matter to them. And that's kind of what we talk about. And then the things that they don't want to talk about are even more exciting to cover. Like nobody's saying, oh, please bring me on the show and make me the devil's advocate for cameras, or please tell me how great brokers are. But yet here we are doing these exciting topics to cover and just try to bring a light onto things. Again, education that can be fun is going to help everyone understand exactly where drivers may feel about brokers versus inward-facing cameras, where carriers might see the advocacy.
Have you talked about speed limiters yet? Because that's coming.
It's
right?
coming. It's coming, and it's one of those
coming.
things.
Wait till you get to that hot topic with drivers, because they all got something to say on that, right?
And I drove.
Me too. Me too for years, and I'll tell you, it makes sense. There's two sides to every story, and I'll tell you they need to be told. I think you're doing a great job in doing that, and also bringing up these difficult discussions, because it's important to hear so many times we tune out the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, and let me just tell you, that's being done in the politics world of late, right? So they're just tuning each other out and not listening to, everyone else, right? They already have the answer. So I think that's a little bit
They
of problem.
think they have the answers.
Yeah, that's what, well, ask them. They'll tell you they have them. But
My
but
son
I
does
think,
too, and he's 12.
yeah, exactly. But I think, Charles, what you're doing is a great service by going out there and talking about it in both ways, right? You're bringing up the driver's aspect of it. You're talking to them. They're discussing it, and it's going into an open format. I think it needs to be done. How do we hear your podcast? I want to know, where do we get it? How often does it take place? Is it every day? Is it once a week? Is it and when can we expect the next one? And where do we listen to it at?
Yeah, so you can Google Cents Per Mile on all the major listening platforms. We're there. You can subscribe to us on YouTube under Cents Per Mile, or by following Hot Seat Services, Cents Per Mile, or even CDL Life's pages on LinkedIn. We're posting it up every bi-weekly, usually dropping on Fridays, and then we give little snippets of it throughout the week in between episodes.
Can you give me a little hint on what the next one's going to be about? Can you give me a clue?
Brokers.
The Make Me Brokers.
Actually, I'm excited about this one because we put a post out and we were looking for brokers to come on and answer drivers' questions from the CDL Life app. And drivers, as you know, aren't going to hold back on the brokers, and we offered them to be completely nameless, hidden, everything. We had someone come on that had no shame and said, hey, I want to do this. I don't need to be nameless. I'm going to address these questions. And they didn't hold back, and neither did we. It's going to be an exciting episode.
Nice. I like that. I definitely like it when people take the full blast of a truck driver. We've all been there. We've all done that. When a driver gets mad, they let you know, and which is good. And I think it's important that we have those conversations. I'll bet it was good for both sides, right? That in that moment. And the broker, he's probably heard most of it all before. And the drivers have probably heard some of those. But to actually have that conversation is necessary in making sure that we get it, right? Because there are two sides, right? There may be a wall between them, but there are two sides to that wall. And
trying to take those opinions and bring them together where people can see the other perspective. Perception is reality. A lot of times these decisions are made up high level and no one's taking in the guy at the bottom's opinion. And I think that's where this industry needs to go. They need to listen to the drivers, the mechanics, everyone, because you'd be surprised what kind of solutions they can offer to these everyday problems.
Charles, let me ask you real quick. What's the best thing you've gotten out of the podcast? What is it given to you?
It's given us a platform to bring awareness to issues that I found very near and dear to myself that nobody was covering, and I think it's got a lot of room to grow. It's in its early stages, but I'm excited for just what our network has done for us, tuning in and getting us to this point this fast.
Let me say, are you thinking about leaving your side gig with Hot Seats and staying on the podcast full time? Are we thinking about this as a permanent career?
I definitely see it sticking around for a long time, but I love what I do. I love putting drivers in good jobs and giving good jobs access to good drivers. So I'm not sure I could ever let that go. I truly enjoy that part of it.
So let me do, before we get out of here, let me make sure everybody knows that Hot Seat Services, if you need to talk to about recruiting, how do they get a hold of you? At hotseatservices.com, is that correct?
Yeah, they can message us through our instant messenger on hotseatservices.com or email us at info@hotseatservices.com.
Perfect. And they can listen to you as well on Cents Per Mile in all the platforms that you described earlier, correct?
Absolutely. We encourage it.
All right. Hey, you know what, Charles? Thanks for coming in here. But before you get out of here, I ask all of our guests before they go, I ask them all to state their name, who they're with, and that you're watching BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Can you do that?
Yeah, I got you. So I'm Charles Gracey with Hot Seat Services, and you're with BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
There you go. Thank you much, Charles, man. Have a great day, and we will see you later. Okay, sir?
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye now. That's Charles Gracey over there at Hot Seat Services and also doing his Cents Per Mile podcast, man. Make sure you get a chance, tune in, listen to some of the stuff going on between, man, I'm kind of excited about the broker truck driver debate fixing to happen over there. So kind of excited about it. Make sure you get on and get in and listen to what's coming up.